Hey, welcome. This is Leanne Bridges, and I'm author, speaker, and transformation coach and founder of Designing Transformation. Helps people to really blossom into their full potential, whether it be in their work, in their careers, in their business, or as a team lead. So I'm really excited today to have a conversation with Alistair Price, and he's the founder of Authentic People Solutions. And we're going to talk a little bit about what authentic people and authentic leadership is all about, and why that's so important today in these very turbulent times. So welcome, Alistair. Thanks so much for joining us.
And well, thanks for having me.
All right. Maybe you can just give us a little bit of background on your kind of transformation journey in your work and how it's led to you starting your own business.
Yeah, well, you know, it's been a great journey, and thank you. I mean, it really started. I've been in HR for 23 years, 17 years at the executive level. Done all sorts of functions in HR, whether it be hiring, whether it be talent management, people development. Well, even health, safety, labor relations. And I've enjoyed every minute of it. Most of that, by the way, has been in organizations. Okay, so large organizations, aviation, Air Canada, Aeroplan, Sky Regional Airlines, Tech Executive Aviation Group. So they've been some really great experiences. And as I've grown throughout it, I've moved up to the executive rank, and you're on executive teams, I sort of see a need, and this is what was in me, to be very authentic and real, and really to share information and to be transparent. And I figured as I was going through this journey, the more you're in a company and the higher you're up in a senior position, sometimes it's very tough to be completely transparent because you're always concerned about hurting people's feelings, providing the unvarnished truth. And when the opportunity happened this April, again, restructuring from the aviation industry, I said, you know what, it's time for me to take the next step in my journey, in my life journey, and to do what I really want to do. And that's really to be working with small to medium organizations, quite frankly, could even be large organizations, but working with people and helping them move forward authentically. So being able to be very transparent, to listen to what their real needs are, and to see how I can help them get unstuck and move forward. So that's how I've arrived at it. And I've opened up Authentic People Solutions with a colleague, Natalie Fauteux, and very similar sort of values: authentic, caring, and that's really what we want to bring to the world.
Great, excellent. Thank you for that introduction. So let's dive into a little bit more. You've done a great job of explaining some of the needs, some of what's happening at the senior levels, and I want to go into that a little bit deeper. And maybe you might have some stories or some ideas. If we think about the idea of transparency, and we both met at Aeroplan many years ago, right, and worked, both of us, at kind of some of the senior levels, and saw that. And I felt, as a consultant, the challenges those senior leaders around. Sometimes I'd be in meetings with the senior VPs, and just seeing the tension and the politics was like kind of what we're seeing on the global stage of the politics that are happening in government. The more you go up, the more the challenges are higher, and there's more to lose. And so there's this incredible tension in a room. And I saw the IT would be going after the HR, and the HR would be going after the marketing VP, and all of them, be like saying, it's your fault, no, it's yours. And there are people underneath of them would be saying the same thing, right? So tell us a little bit about what that's all about and how we can start to do things differently. Because when I was there, I didn't know what I could do at the time to help. And I saw them with not really having solutions of how they could do things differently in those types of team environments.
Right. And I think, Leanne, it's very true. I think it goes back to sort of mindset and how we've been conditioned. So as you move further up in a structure, if you like, in a leadership position, you're supposed to almost defend your fiefdom. That's how we're sort of trained. You're up here, you need to support the people below, sort of defend this sort of fiefdom. Sharing of information can be at your peril. When the real reality is, and you look at the real success of really teams that really succeed, it's collaboration. And that's something that also a lot of executive team members aren't trained in. They're not trained to collaborate, they're trained to sort of hoard. And so the issue is, how do you get people to move in that particular direction? And the first piece of that is what I call self-awareness. And I think this is what's really interesting being in an organization, because you may be self-aware not only of yourself, and you may have a general awareness of the culture, but does that come at a peril? Like, can you go to the executive table, if you like, and share that, saying, look, we don't really work that well together, and can we have an open discussion? For a lot of organizations, still that's scary. That's like, no, we can't do that. Don't show any weakness. We're just going to go ahead, and you'll usually have someone who just bulldozes ahead. The implications of that, let's go back, because that's an important piece, is it basically kills collaboration, and as it funnels right down the organization, people just basically disengage. And when anything about disengagement, people disengage. That's when if you talk about profits and growth of an organization, that's when you really get peril. And that's what you're going to see in COVID. You're going to see that right now with what's happened to organizations as they collapse. Is there are choices for employees. Some employees are just going to say, look, I'm going to move on. This is an opportunity for me, because this is not a place where I feel I have a place. So as an executive, if you believe in collaboration and you're open to those discussions, you'll have success. However, and this is where the role and what I look at the work I want to do is, sometimes I need someone from outside to come in and say, look, I've observed, and I know you're trying to work through an idea, and I'm not here to judge that, but there's no collaboration. There's people that are feeling left out, and quite frankly, if you're going to move this forward, if you decided, why don't we work on trying to work better together as a team? Be authentic, be transparent. Let's put our fears on the table. Let's put our ideas on the table, and then we walk out of here, we can be aligned to move forward.
That's great. Really awesome. And this is what's so important right now. So if I take that example again and say, what if you're a leader, and maybe you're in a collaborative team of peers, or even you're managing people, and either the people you're collaborating with, you're trying to have that transparency, or the people that are reporting to you. What if there are some people that are really blocking, and they might be saying things like, I already self-aware, what you're talking about is, and I'm already collaborating, but it's clear they're not. And so you're in this position either with peers or people that are reporting to you. I mean, they're probably very different, maybe your solutions, but what are some of the things that, let's have a conversation around that and what people can do. Because I think even when you have people reporting to you, you might still feel stuck, because you're in an organizational structure. You can't just say, hey, see you later, go. you gotta work with those people and try to get them on board. But they can be really important influencers in the company, and they're blocking what you're trying to do in terms of the collaboration and transparency.
Yes, I think the first piece with this is, we're going to use this word called psychological safety. So that's one thing when you're having a conversation with anybody. You have to see where are they feeling safe? Do they trust you, is another word of using as well too. Because if they don't, it's very difficult to have an authentic conversation. So you really have to find ways to, first of all, measure that. And sometimes you can be somewhat direct, and is this a good time to have a conversation? This is a good time to have a difficult conversation. I need to bring up an issue that I'd really like you to listen to and just give me some feedback on. Provided you get that sort of response, then you can probably feel safe to put that the issues on the table. If not, you may need to collaborate with other members of an executive team that have a relationship with that person to discuss an idea. Again, I want to stress it, discuss an idea, not discuss necessarily the personality, right? Because I always find if you judge people, if you come from a morality perspective, that creates a whole host of issues. So wars get started over that, okay, a morality piece. So if you come from a humanistic approach, you have a much better chance. In other words, you emphasize, you're actually trying to understand what the issues may be, okay, behind the topic that you want to talk about. And often, there's a feeling component. That's what we call the right side of the brain. And if you can figure that piece out and then construct your conversation when they feel psychologically safe, that to me is what often leads to breakthroughs. And I'll even share just a quick story. When I was at Aeroplan, I had one individual on my team who I had a real difficulty sort of communicating with. And I just didn't understand. And I think the feedback when we sat down on how to do it, I said, look, we need to have a difficult conversation because this isn't working. And we sat down and I learned a lot about my approach. I came across as being very sort of demanding and direct. And once I understood that, I took it on myself, so, oh, I understand. And so, give me some ideas of how I might be able to approach the situation. And I got some great tips, some great feedback. And then what happened, and this is where I talk about the breakthrough, once I understood from their perspective how it came across, and I was able to adapt to their perspective and how I spoke to them, we had tremendous breakthroughs. So a tremendous collaboration. And that made life a lot easier for both of us. And quite frankly, I would say a benefit for the organization.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Really good. So, coming back to the idea of the fiefdom. So let's talk about, maybe you've been able to have that conversation with and open up and have that trust. And what you're sensing is that there is a protectionism and there's the fear of loss of job, or you're going to be retired too early, or, what am I going to do in retirement? That there's a lot of people at the senior level, they're trying to figure that out, right? Whether if you're like 40 or 50, you might be just holding on for your job. But as you're 50 to 60, you might also be thinking, well, what am I going to do next? How can I stay here as long as possible? And sometimes that staying as, how do I say, they're protecting their job, and the protecting their job is not in the best interest of the company. What are some of the things that you can do at that stage where you kind of see they're acting that way, not because of the way you've been acting, but because they're really trying to protect their job, their role currently, or even into later years?
Right. I think it goes back to how we've been sort of conditioned, right? All through our schooling, it's all about, merit, and you sort of, you move up the highest marks and then they'll become doc or become this or that. It's not about, hey, do you really enjoy what you're doing, right? And so what often happens is you get into potentially, and it's happened to me, where you get into a role and you feel stuck. It's great. It's but you're not really growing. And I think that's the piece that we need to reflect on. That's what I had to reflect on, is we're not growing. And as a result of that, it can actually get you to feel quite miserable. So sometimes it's also having a discussion with these individuals and sort of saying, like, what is your future? Like, what would you like to do if and just sometimes you got to park just financial resources for a second, because that's important. But what do you see yourself? Where do and I'll give an example. Well, actually, one book I like is, 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. Okay, I'm talking about, trust and moving through the different. Anyways, you move up through the various stages and alignment and goals, but it also can be very much tied to, yourself as a team member. What do you see? Like, how do you see your life? What's the result you want to give back to the organization? Or let's go bigger. What life in life? What are your priorities? And I think sometimes having people reflect on that makes a really big difference. I'm also going to tie in another thing with organizations. Organizations are typically being, well, look, we're here to support you within the organization, right? That's simply what it is. And we'll provide the resources, the tools. We're going to tell you basically what to do. Well, the reality with people is, they're not necessarily going to stick with an organization for their whole life, right? And if they are, and the people that do, they tend to be sort of developed through it, right? They've been able to get opportunities, get some sort of growth. So here's a thought from an organizational perspective. Provide opportunities for people to learn, maybe change jobs, maybe experience different projects. That's a way to keep people engaged, and that might be able to pull people out of their fiefdoms. The other piece, though, that I think, and this comes to the individual, and this is really important, and I can't stress this enough, but we also live in an age where you've got to take accountability for your own learning and development. That is a myth, as always has been, that the company is going to look after you. If they do, that's fantastic, okay? But many don't, and I personally don't think it's necessarily the company's responsibility exclusively for doing that. I really think it's important that you need to. So how do you look after yourself? This is where things like networking This is where things about, learning, whether it's, you're reading, you're learning new ideas, you're sharing, you would take LinkedIn, you're sharing ideas. I think that's a great way to basically grow, because the more people you meet, the more ideas, it provides opportunities for you that will occur. And that's where, if you're feeling stuck and you network, and that's what I've learned in life, when I least expect it, someone calls up and says, hey, you know what, let's have a discussion. Can you help me out with this or that? And it's led to a lot of growth for myself. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. There's so many different points there that I want to bring back here. First is the idea of self-discovery. And, well, else, even before that, people have to be open to first, the conversation, as you said, feeling safe, feeling they will benefit from it. A lot of people will say, I might or may not feel safe, but I don't need this information. I don't need to grow. I don't need to evolve. I'm fine where I am at, because that's often people are the least self-aware are stuck that way. But then they get into such suffering that at some point they have to say, okay, I have to do things differently because they're not happy in their job or with what's going on in projects or in their life. But let's say that people are least open to saying, let's do some self-discovery. And whether the company supports it or, as you're saying, it's the responsibility of the individual. This is something that I'm also really passionate about. And I think that people haven't really spent very much time on looking within, looking at themselves, looking at what is it that really lights them up. Where do they feel very passionate? Where do they sense of fulfillment? And looking at that in context of all that they've learned in their life, both professionally and personally, and putting that together with what is their authentic style? How do they work and how do they work with each other? How do they work in the world? And pulling that together with their creativity. Like, as you know, I call it the thrive zone. When people understand where they really thrive, and it's not just like, okay, here's my map or here's my quadrant that I fit into and now I'm done. It's an ongoing organic understanding, greater and greater, of who they are. And the more they understand that, the more they can take, as you said, the responsibility. And if companies also can help them a little bit with that. And I've had some wonderful experiences when companies do that. And people say, well, I'm worried they're going to leave. Well, isn't that great? If you have more people aligned in their job with who they authentically are, what they love to do, and less people that are mismatched, you're going to have a well-oiled machine in your company, right? And so I think that idea of self-discovery and self-leadership is really, really important right now. But not everyone's open to it, right?
No. And I think,
yeah.
Leanne, here's and you realize being in this space quite a bit longer than I have, and the work you do is really valuable. So here's a piece. If you are aware, I want to start with, how do you get help? My view is seek out someone who's knowledgeable. Seek out a coach. And everybody thinks, so that's a bad word. No, because quite frankly, an investment of time with someone who can help you explore different ways to discover different talents you have is invaluable. And I think that's a really big piece. And that's a piece that I'm evolving into as well, too. I'm doing a bit of career coaching now, which I really enjoy. And I look at even my experience with career coaching, that's helped me get through that, what I call that fear of change. Because this is why do people want to, because it's safe not to change. But here is the challenge. We're in the middle of COVID, a major pandemic development in our lives where the norm has changed dramatically, right? So what often happens for change, I remember actually way back in studying this 25 years ago when I was doing my master's, it's the same thing. Sometimes it just ends up in a crisis. In other words, you lose your job. You lose. So often that is a way for those that are self-aware or that are comfortable, suddenly, hey, well, this is what's happened. And you just have to basically keep going, keep moving forward, right?
Don't
so
crisis
to me,
go to waste. I love it.
never let a crisis go to waste. And that's really what it is. And I think this is where it's a huge opportunity. So I'm going to tell you right now, a job loss is a huge opportunity to try something different, to go and discover what you want, to step back and to be able to move forward. And I think that's really important. Now, for those that are not prepared, I'll be very blunt with this with training. It dumbfounds me, companies that spend money on training and they haven't even assessed if people want to do the training. It's a big waste of time and money. Don't invest in people that don't want to do the training. So I've seen it. People go on leadership courses because they're in a leadership position. Well, if they don't want to do training, they don't want to be a leader, my advice is don't invest in them. right? Be very
Yes.
clear about the expectations are, but don't invest in them. At the flip
Mhm.
side, and this is where your personal responsibility comes, when you realize that, hey, this isn't working and you're aware you want to change something, that's when you should invest. So for instance,
Mhm.
let's say you're having trouble with stress, which is a really big thing, and resilience at this time. My
Yeah.
advice is get some help with that, whether it's
Mhm.
online resources or a coach, because that will be invaluable to helping you move forward. That's a good investment of your time and money. So yeah.
Very, really good advice. And I think that as people start to recognize that there is a lot of resources and help out there, they'll be able to kind of make some of these changes for themselves. And what I've seen is that um, often people look outside of themselves for solutions. So, for example, I had a client that I was talking to recently, and she's also an executive and wanting to maybe start her own business or something. And a few people and coaches even said to her, no, you wouldn't be good in being an entrepreneur, or you wouldn't be good outside of a company because you want to do the thing as opposed to coach people. And I said, well, why don't we look at who you are and what really makes you up? Because when people just make snap decisions for you, you haven't done the assessment yourself. And what about also the fact that sometimes certain types of coaches are not career coaches? So they might be a life coach, they might be an executive coach, but they don't have the strength of the career to see what are all the options for people. For example, with this one, I said to her, well, you could be more like of a consultant coach, meaning you could go in and sometimes you do for, sometimes you do with, you're teaching and you're doing, and sometimes you really just empower and support and coach. And you can provide all of those services under kind of one roof because you've had the hands-on experience. A lot of coaches don't have that hands-on experience. And those coaches didn't see that because that's not their expertise, right? So it's really important that we don't always look outwards, that you have somebody that draws it from within and helps you gain it from within as well.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think it's interesting too and this is one thing about building confidence and mindset. So actually Harvard Business, we had a great article a few months ago, and it basically said people are terrible at evaluating other people's strengths. They're terrible.
Yes.
So even like performance
Yes.
reviews. So 80%. So, and I would consider most people 80%. So, you may say, well, I'm one of the 20% that's not. Actually, it's really quite shocking because you are, and even myself. So first of all, don't judge other people
Yeah.
because I think what's really important, and this is something I'm going to go back when we were young kids. How do we learn when we were children? We just tried things, right? How do
Mhm.
we learn to walk? How do we learn to crawl? How do we learn how we learned, in school? Quite frankly, it's from trial and error, being exposed to different activities. Well, so first thing for your friend is, you got to try it. You got to try it.
Mhm.
It's just like, for instance, I tried teaching a few years ago and I loved it, right?
Mhm.
And I've done quite well with that. I'm teaching at McGill, Concordia. I love that piece, and so that's something I want to develop more. Then there's other things I've done. For instance, I'll talk about finance and numbers and putting detail. I'm not all that interested in that. Can I do it? Yeah, I can, but I'm not all that interested in it. And that's something to say, well, then I'm not going to put my time into that. But I think the real
Yeah.
shame is when people go, well, I'm not going to do this because someone told me not to do it. My view is you need to have the courage. That's another piece of a trend, having that courage to go and try different things. And often you
Mhm.
can list it out. What's the worst that can happen, right? And often when you
Mhm.
write that down, as long as it's not you're going to die, why not give it a shot? Why not give it? Put a time frame on it. I think that to me is a really important consideration. So again, be careful with people from outside telling you that you can't do this or this, or no, don't do a consultant, don't do this. To me, that's it's advice and you can listen to it, but what's coming from within? What is authentically, what do you feel? Is this something you want to try? Do you have the courage? Then try it. And
Mhm.
this is a great time to do that. Yeah.
I love it. And courage is such an important factor. We always hear people saying, I'm trying to get confident, I'm trying to get even clarity. And the
Mhm.
number one factor that I've found is courage, of being able, as you said, lean into it, try it. You learn from that, and then it informs you of your next step. You can't figure it all out by just sitting at your desk and trying to even just, analyzing what you think you want until you try it in the real world. You have no idea.
That's
And
right.
this happens to me all the time. Like I keep having a new idea. I think, oh, that's what I'm going to do. And then I try doing it, and then it's very different, my outcome. And I went, oh, that's why I'm doing this. It's a
Mhm.
different reason.
That's right.
You think you got it all figured out. It's like, no. And as long as we're more open to it, I think it's really crazy.
Uh,
So
Yeah.
the other thing is, sorry, go ahead,
No, I was just
Alistair.
going to say, which I loved your word about like openness and
Yeah.
trying different things. Again, we've talked extensively about. I've known you since Aeroplan about all your you know
Mhm.
development and opportunities and reinventing yourself. And I think it's just incredible because when you look back and you see where you are now, it's just
Mhm.
it's amazing. I feel myself that a big weight
Yeah.
has come off of being stuck, if you like, for me in an organization and being
Yes.
forced not to be very authentic as I'd like to be, right? And
Mhm.
I think that's what, to me, has helped me, what I call self-actualization. It's helped me to start to say, hey, look, let me try different things. I've always been interested, and being open and courageous about those opportunities. And I think that's really, and again, if you can do it on an individual level, that's fantastic. And then if your organization, you have leadership that's open for that and truly believes on, just not the lip service and the stay, oh yeah, we're innovators and all this sort of stuff. No, innovation means you're open to new ideas. You're helping people try different things, and they're not looking in a what I call a culture of fear that if they mess up, they're going to be shown the door. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a good point. And I want to come back to another point you talked about with the like leadership training, for example, and doing some assessment ahead of time to see who wants to and so forth. And I've had some of my own experience working in organizations where the type of work of mindset and kind of self-management, self-leadership, self-awareness is really all about self-responsibility. So, I go in saying, I don't want to force anyone to take this. And that's kind of counter to what organizations, like, you've got a leadership course, everyone has to go on. And so what happens is some people, like, if you try to force people into a self-awareness program and they don't want it and they're not open, it doesn't really work very well. On the other
Yeah.
hand, if you say just like, it's open, people are so trained to be having to be accountable, having to have external rewards and all that kind of thing. So I'm seeing that, a need to do things differently. I don't have all the answers. I don't know if you have any ideas around that, but how to try to marry the old way or step from the old way of, okay, this is a course for everyone. These are the milestones. Everyone's got to participate, which is the old way. And it doesn't necessarily work in the kind of content that we're talking about, to, hey, almost hippy dippy, like, okay, you guys figure it out. Here's the stuff. You join, you don't join, whatever. And there's something in between, and that's the challenge as we're changing and we're trying to change the culture. We're trying to change the way people think. Is throwing the baby out with the bathwater doesn't always help as well. So I don't know if you have any ideas about leadership courses and programs that are much more about self-awareness, things that you have to be open to. You can't ram down the throats of anybody else.
No, you can't. And here's my thoughts. And I love this question because even in my time in organizations and even some of the work I was doing lately with the last few organizations was around doing self-awareness and helping people themselves with certain assessments. I used what's called the Thomas PPA, personality assessment, and it wasn't judging your personality, but what it was basically a tool used to show how you appear, like, to yourself, like not yourself, but to other people, right? And what was really interesting about it, and it to me, it was less the outcome of what the tool showed and what quadrant you're in, because that to me, it was more people going, yeah, that sounds like me, or that doesn't sound like me, but I'd like to discover a little bit more. And in both cases, it was just going through to be able to say, yeah, that's me, and that's how I come across. That's how I like, my communication style. And then here's the breakthrough: when you're within a team group, people start to say, oh, that's how I would better communicate with you. And
Mhm.
so it opens them up to be more self-aware, to receive, like, feedback from other people of how they interact. And it also had pieces in there about development opportunities that they might be interested in. So, for instance, if you come up as a highly sort of stressed individual, uptight, and you're really struggling, what would be good would be potentially some mindfulness training, right? Maybe to try that, right? So this would be, then this is where you almost tailor it. Is it something where you, go online, find a program, a meditation program example, or do you, for instance, I know Leanne, you're in this space, speak to Leanne and be able to do it. Because I think that's where that's where the value comes, because the person recognizes, self-aware, there's a need, here's a solution. And because they understand there's a need, going, yeah, this is great. Then they start to feel, and talk about recognition and rewards, then they start to feel, hey, my organization cares about me. So an idea would be, even with organizations, maybe you have what I call a reward budget for training development, where people can, as part of the compensation, they can sign up for courses, whether part of the organization or, quite frankly, whether outside. And I think the return on that would be because people go back, hey, they're investing in me, but they're also tailoring something that's going to help me be better and help develop me as a person. And I think that, to me, is really invaluable. So inclusion, I just think that's the piece. If there's anything that either you do yourself, or if the organization, and the first step before doing any employee development needs is, why not have them do a self-assessment of their awareness and what their strengths are. That, to me, is what's going to lead to breakthroughs, rather than going through and saying, well, we're assuming you're this. And, my famous thing is being on a time management course, because my boss, this is my favorite story to training. I was pulled into his office. Alistair said, I think you should go on a time management course. And I said, oh, really? And at the end of because I didn't have any time management issues. And he basically said, yeah, it's I can't go on it. So, and it's tomorrow. And I always remember that. It struck me going, I don't think this is the best way to do training. And of course, I was in there, and of course, I was fighting the course the whole time. Like, why am I here? Now, listen, I did learn a few things, but my question is, that's the problem. A lot of employees like, why am I here? This is not a good use of my time. So, no.
Yeah. That's great. I love that. And you know what? We're kind of running out of time. So I think what I'd love to do is have some more conversations with you in the future around some of these tools, some of the resources that are available, different ideas to help team leaders as well as individuals within their career. This is just the start, Alistair. So thank you so much. And so before I close, how can people get in touch with you? Just your website, and I'll put some of the information down there. But
terrific. Well, first of all, thank you for having me, Alana. I love discussions with like-minded people, authentic people. So thank you so much for having me. To reach out to me, you can check out the website, authentichr.ca, or you can contact me by email at aprice72@me.com, or by phone 514-485-1240.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And until next time, have a wonderful day. Thank you all.
You too. Thanks. Bye for now.
Bye.